Aside from their strange fixation with Vice President Kamala Harris's laugh, some other arguments, aside from a few things, one of the primary arguments that Fox News has been making and Trump has been making against Harris is that she can't do tough interviews, that surely she doesn't have a grasp of her policies or isn't competent enough because we don't think she's doing tough enough interviews. And so while even before what we're going to talk about here, it was obvious that that wasn't exactly true because she had been doing a lot more interviews lately, it was the craziest and now I'm realizing most effective example of a politician calling the other side's bluff and going, all right, I'm going to pick the toughest interview to do imaginable, which is sitting down with Fox News itself and doing an interview. That's what Kamala Harris did. And we've discussed some interviews that are, fine. I've said fine on a lot of Kamala Harris interviews. Did what she needed to. This is a different example. This is great. And we'll walk through moments. I actually think Trump's going to end up being mad at Fox News for this because while Bret Baier grilled and was really aggressive in his interviewing style with Kamala Harris, she definitely ended up making this worthwhile. And I think, like I said, this is bad for Trump. Fox News is doing Trump dirty by allowing Kamala Harris to speak to a group of voters, some of which never hear her message except for through the filtered lens of Fox. Now they get it unfiltered. This was unedited. Fox says she only makes sense in certain interviews because she gets edited. This was completely unedited. And she nailed it. Starting with this.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. But think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you...
I'm telling you that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump...
The significance of that.
You call Donald Trump... he's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not.
Yes, and we're going to go a little further in a second. Please do click the subscribe button if you haven't already. This is Fox News, probably accidentally, taking away from Trump any credible argument that Trump's the one who can be challenged and still successfully explain his policy positions coherently. This is taking away she can't handle tough interviews, so how could she handle Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, etc., which is the argument they've been making before. I thought it was already an inaccurate argument, but now she goes, all right, fine. What's the most difficult interview you could possibly imagine? Sitting down with Fox News, the ones pushing all this nonsense about me. And nails it. I'm not just saying that because I want her to win the election. I'm saying that as objectively as I can observe this interview, that was my takeaway. And while you're going to hear, and we're going to review this, don't get mad about it because they're going to do it no matter what. Just put it in your mind as a given that no matter what Kamala Harris does, the MAGA people, the Fox News pundits, etc., are going to walk away from it saying, she did terrible, she imploded, oh. They kept calling her angry, which I wonder why. So angry. Oh, she's even though that's the only way when someone keeps interrupting you, the only way you can get your point out is to speak over them. And they know, though. So don't get irritated by people going, oh, this is so bad. I'll show you more clips in a second. Because they were going to say that anyways. But the voters that matter, that can be influenced, some who've never seen or heard her in this unfiltered, through the Fox News filtering process sort of way, they will have the takeaway that I'm talking about of, oh, this is not the caricature that MAGA has portrayed. She's sharp, knows what she's talking about, can hold her own even when she's with a hostile interviewer. I really do think that's sort of your undecided voters' takeaway if they were to watch this interview. And that is Fox News actually accidentally hurting Trump by doing this interview than this.
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
So is that the communist, Marxist, fascist caricature that Trump has attempted to portray her as? No. Those are just some common sense proposals. And she's never said that particular phrase, but now because of this being something she keeps being confronted about, she's deciding to say, my presidency will not be the continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. Which, if you have my view of Biden's presidency, it feels a little unnecessary to say that, because I think Biden's presidency generally has been pretty successful. And if she were to continue on, especially the domestic legislative achievements of Biden, that would be exciting. But unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't feel that way. So it's something she needs to do politically. And it's an accurate point to make, because that sounds like I said inaccurate. That is accurate to say, I'm not Joe Biden. I'm bringing new ideas. Of course, I'm proud of the Inflation Reduction Act and manufacturing boom and crime plummeting and the recovery being successful. But I'm someone different. And I have new ideas for a new moment with new or different challenges I'm going to prioritize addressing. Fair. Clearly, people want to hear her say that. And while it can feel sort of uncomfortable for, like I said, people with my view of his presidency, it makes sense. And she was, of course, confronted for probably like 10 or 15 minutes about the border. That's the big subject on Fox News. And I thought she handled that effectively as well.
Hours of taking the oath. The first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the...
Finish?
Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising,
okay,
and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
That's how you get it done.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is...
And again, goes through the specifics that we've walked through on the border security bill. And it was a lot of admittedly tough questions. Now, I do want to say that a lot of people are upset at Bret Baier. As I said before, whenever I expect something from someone, I get less upset, even though maybe that's not the correct standard. But I knew he was going to be a pretty hostile interviewer. But in a rational world, that's totally fine. When you have the chance to sit down with someone who wants to be the most powerful person in the world, be as aggressive in your interviewing style, ask all the tough questions. That's great with me. What people are pointing out is if it were a Republican, less likely Bret Baier, impossible, otherwise you get fired off Fox News, would really grill a Republican like he did in this interview. And as always, I encourage you to watch the full interview. It's 26 minutes, so we don't have time to watch all of it. But some really severe things get brought up. And I think Kamala Harris really did manage those situations well. You're seeing some of the examples here. But I wish that, fine, grill Kamala Harris like this. Can we do it across the board, though? But often on Fox News, Republicans get the softballs. And sometimes Democrats get softballs, but it's definitely a love fest anytime a MAGA politician is with a MAGA interviewer than this.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law. And it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what? You got to take responsible for what happened
presidency.
in your administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in this presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote. And again, his policy was no different. Look at where we are, though.
They say
on plans for the American people,
on.
I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker, would ignite inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as president of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn.
It continues, but that is how it's done. Because what's the ad being run, can we just be adults for a second? Just everyone put on their big boy pants. Are you really telling me your focus in this election is the policy on transgender inmates who are undocumented immigrants? Is there one example of that? Or is that even a thing that has ever happened? There's one? Okay, so let's now talk in this 26-minute interview. Let's devote any time on that. And let me just be as transparent as I can with you. I've never once in my entire life thought about that issue. Not once. I'll proudly say. So I don't even know what laws they're referring to, when that would be something that a prison's responsible for doing, how that logistically happens. So why are we talking about that? I love the way that she went. First of all, I guess as the law stands, if a medically necessary surgery would happen for inmates, that makes sense. So then if that gets deemed to be medically necessary, it would happen. And then if you imagine a scenario where an undocumented immigrant is in jail and then that is deemed medically necessary, oh my gosh. But I love that she goes, so Trump actually abided by those laws and those opportunities were the same as they are under Biden-Harris. But also, can we talk about boom, and then list off issues that are just more consequential? It doesn't mean the lives that we talk about on less consequential issues aren't important and don't matter and shouldn't have people thinking about them. But in an interview like this one, it's totally the correct thing to do, to go, you're using that because you're trying to protect Trump. Because Trump can't argue against my economic proposals, because hundreds and hundreds of renowned economists keep coming out saying her plan would be good for the economy, his would be terrible. Some conservative organizations, as she listed. And because Trump can't argue on that, because when he tries, he just starts talking about tariffs and rockets and circles, you have to focus on a sliced crumb baby issue that most people have never devoted a single calorie to thinking about. Undocumented immigrants getting sex reassignment surgery. Wow. I'm a one issue voter. That's my one issue now. Okay.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's
that
administration
go
that
the Iran regime,
that we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and losers,
Hamas,
has diminished the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
I would like that we would have a conversation that is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes...
It sounds so cheerleading. Let me contrast it against her 60 Minutes interview. Fine. Right? That's what I said. Fine. There were moments that were, and then moments that were strong. This, in politics, not on a TV show where they perfectly script it, in real life, is as close as you get to a flawless interview performance. Yes, sometimes she sort of avoided the questions. And in a perfect world, all politicians would perfectly, directly answer the questions and wouldn't pivot. But given that she's dealing with such a dishonest network, her making sure she uses her 26 minutes to get to issues that could move people, I think is perfectly justified. I did want to pull up, they kept putting up this chart. Let's look at this chart. Energy Information Administration, showing that Iran, the point they're trying to make is that the Biden-Harris administration has allowed Iran to make all this money from oil revenue. But analyze those numbers for a second. 2022, 2023, 2024, all are about the same. $54 billion. 2021 is the 1 year. They're trying to say there's some trajectory. Look, in 2021, when they took over, Iran was making much less in oil revenue, and then they let them make way more because they love Iran. But wait, 2021, was that whenever demand had collapsed? And then 2022, 3, and 4 all are about identical. So it's not a trajectory up. It just went up and then stopped there. Maybe oil revenue was decreased in Iran as it was across the board in all countries during the pandemic because demand collapsed. Crazy. It's not the bombshell they think it is. Again, solid. One of her best interview performance, I would say, thus far. And she used to be known as someone who didn't do that well in interviews. Clearly, she's effectively worked on that. Fox News ended up backfiring and hurting Trump, I think. I hope a lot of Fox News viewers do some introspection and go, that's not who I thought I was voting against. That's a very different person than what Fox portrays her to be. And definitely able to do hard-hitting interviews. I think we can put that talking point to bed. Goodness gracious. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Support the show. Get the bonus show. Become a member by clicking the join button below.